Welcome to the Jessica Broadway Show, where life is now in session and we talk about everything from motherhood to marriage, faith to finances, and the ever-changing face of entrepreneurship. Because life is now in session and there's a lot to talk about. So I'm joined by my really good friend, Tina Edel, and she has also been a coach to me and my business bestie. And today I think it's really important that we have a conversation about money because it matters. And I found over the years, learning through different things, that the two arguments that most couples or people face are arguments over sex and money. Did you know that?
Not about the sex, but I definitely know that financial infidelity and financial discord are one of the leading causes of divorce.
Yes. And so we're not going to talk about sex, but we do need to talk about the money. And as women of faith and both married and have kids, I'm sure that you can resonate with what most people do, and that's that your money story has changed throughout your life. There's a couple different scenarios. When we worked together, we met in a coffee shop, and I shared with you that I had some money drama in my mind about different things, and you helped me unpack that money story and to learn a little bit and be reflective of that, but then to learn and become comfortable with money again in a way that didn't make me afraid of it. And so I feel like this is an important conversation to have for everybody, but to have a different perspective. And it really hit me as I was on vacation recently. I was walking through all the neighborhood of all these homes, and I was looking for real ideas to make content with. And there's this one that was me praying that I can swipe my card and it works or something like that, and that was the air of the reel, was that financial freedom was the ability to swipe and it works, and to be irresponsibly spending. And I understand it was satire and it was humor and it was meant for a good conversation, but maybe it's just the way my brain works, but I always analyze things. I'm like, that isn't really the reality. And because of the work we've done together and my growth in other areas, I've evolved in the way that I see money. But really, financial freedom to me means being able to swipe the card and know that it's going to work because all of my money has been told where it goes. And that's, to me, what real financial freedom is knowing that you can swipe your card with confidence because you did the work on the back end to know that it's going to work, not because you're being irresponsible and, frivolous with your spending, but because you've told your money where to go. And I can't think of a better person to come on and have that conversation with and to share the journey of money with people, because I love your story and I love what you're doing and how you teach it. So would you tell everybody a little bit about you?
Yes, it's my honor. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, as you guys heard, my name is Tina. It's actually Christina Edel. So if you look for me online, that's how you'll find me. But I go by Tina for all my friends, and I invite you guys to call me Tina also. My story has stops and starts to it. So there were definitely times throughout my life where money had a negative impact on me. And I would say that up until probably my mid-20s, I didn't even really pay attention to money. I just looked at it like that was a part of life, and I had very little understanding of money, the purpose of money, and I received zero education from my parents on money. I often tell people that the only lessons I really learned growing up were manage your debt and pay your bills. That was really the gist of it. And that led for me to have a couple of sort of underpinned beliefs about money that I didn't realize were there until 35. And that one of the core underpinning beliefs was that everybody has debt. I just assumed that if part of my financial responsibility is to manage debt, then everybody has debt. And so that was one. And then another thing that often came up with pay your bills was make sure your credit cards are covered, and that you should always take good care of your credit because credit cards are for emergencies. So now if you can imagine, for my young mind, that sort of immediately created two underpinning beliefs. One, everybody has debt, and that debt is for emergencies. So now walk with me into the future a bit. And I am now 27 years old. My husband and I just bought our first home, and we bought it in 2007, right before the big financial collapse. And we bought it in one of the worst ways possible. We took out a double mortgage. So at the very start, we took out 2 mortgages. The first one was a 30-year fixed interest only. And the second one was a 5-year ARM. So for those of you who don't know what that means, it essentially means that it had a fixed rate for 5 years, and then it would go adjustable, but the way to get out of the adjustable rate was to pay a balloon payment. So essentially pay it off in 5 years, which I thought, no problem. We'll have grown value in the property. We'll just refinance before that comes due. Well, then the collapse happened, and the house that we bought for $190,000 was suddenly worth $134,000. That was the first financial hurdle that woke me up to realizing I have to pay attention to where my money goes. Before that, I was making good money and spending frivolously, just having the ease of buying what I want, when I want, without really a care for the future. And now we had a really clear goal of we have to pay off this balloon payment before it's due. So that was the first thing that introduced me to budgeting. Now we get comfortable, we're budgeting, we're growing in our careers. Luckily, we were some of the people that didn't lose their jobs, did get promotions, continued to grow. And now I'm 32 years old, and I have maybe 1 month left due in my pregnancy, and my mom passes away. Now, this was a really tragic time for me, as you guys can imagine. I'm about to have my first child, and also I lost my mom. And I think what compounded all of this is while I'm in the grief of losing my mom and all of that entails, I also realize that even though at this point in our careers, my husband and I have a household income of about $150,000 a year, we can't afford daycare. But I'm the primary income earner, so I have got to go back to work after my 8 weeks of disability are over. So what happened for us in some weird turn of events is that we were unable to pay for daycare because I had so much student loan debt, so much credit card debt, and now a new mortgage on a different house. So we had learned how to budget, but I had miscalculated in the budget the cost of daycare. What I thought was going to be a per period cost was actually a weekly cost. So we were short like $500 a month, and the biggest culprit was my student loan debt. That payment alone was like over $600 a month. Wow. So through circumstance and my mom's foresight, she had life insurance, and that ended up putting us in a position where we were able to wipe out the student loan debt completely. So now we were able to breathe again. You would think that I would have learned at that point.
That the times we have to repeat lessons in life.
It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous how many times we have to learn certain lessons. So now that we had some breathing room again, we just continued in life, and we realized maybe we shouldn't have, we paid off the student loans. Maybe we shouldn't have so much credit cards. So we paid off the credit cards only to let it creep back up again.
Yeah, done that before.
Yeah.
A few times, unfortunately.
It's like you feel a pain point, and that spurs activity, and then everything sort of lessens. Now, where the pain for me continued is that I was a firm believer that I was going to climb the corporate ladder, that I was going to be in the C-suite one day. I had my MBA. I mean, you guys, I was the company girl, and I loved it. Until my mom died and my daughter was born. After that happened, the grief that I felt and the recognition of how important motherhood was to me changed the way I looked at my career, but I wasn't willing to accept that yet. I kept arguing, I'm just depressed, I'm going through a phase, I'll go back to being the company girl. And I kept trudging along. Well, I kept getting promotions, you guys. I was very talented in my job, and people put me on that leadership track. And so with every promotion, I had lifestyle creep. So everything came to a head when I was 35, and my husband's father got desperately ill, and he was in ICU, and he was literally on his deathbed. My husband went up to spend with him. He was in ICU for a month. My husband left me in Colorado with 2 children under the age of 3, and he went back up to Montana to be with his dad. And after about a month, I lost it. The pressures of work, the pressures of just life, of being a mother with young children, trying to hold down. It was like a single mother month, and it was very, very hard. I asked my husband to come home because I was losing it, literally. He came home and his father died 4 days later. And in that moment, I just felt like I was a horrible employee because I didn't really want to be there. I was a horrible wife because I took my husband away from his father's deathbed. And I was a horrible mother because I couldn't manage 2 babies on my own.
Yeah.
And ultimately, for me, it ended up becoming a highlight, if you will. And I wasn't a believer yet, but I do truly think that God was working in my life, even at this point. And I realized if we didn't have all of these payments, we could have made different choices. I could have gone on to FMLA leave with my husband. I could have been in Montana with him, supporting him, instead of drowning in responsibility that felt overwhelming and overburdened me. And I would have had the freedom to make the choice that felt right for our household. And once that idea connected, once I realized that managing your payments and getting out of debt isn't for a certain season, it's actually an entire way to think about your life in terms of always making sure that you have enough margin in every single paycheck to build stability for your life so that you can live your life the way you want. That is when I started to look for instructors who could teach me how to do that. And I found Dave Ramsey, who, if you guys are familiar, is a huge proponent for getting out of debt. It reinforced the way I felt about payments. And that, I'll be honest, was the beginning of a complete life pivot for me. It took my husband and it took me probably about 3 months to get my husband on board. He was not bought in right away. It wasn't a miraculous shift for him like it was for me. But I kept sending him debt-free screams, and I kept sending him videos of like people who were in worse position than us being like, look at how bad it is. Like if they weren't in debt, it would be better. And he finally came around to it. And so we ended up paying off, in the grand scheme of everything, we paid off our house, all the credit cards, furniture, cars, everything. I think in the grand total, we paid off like $270,000 worth of debt in a 5-year period.
Yeah.
We went hard.
So
we went so hard.
Bravo.
Yeah, it was very intense. And there were things that happened, windfalls we got along the way that helped us do it. There is definitely the grace of God. I became a Christian during this window of time, and I have no doubt that his hand was on it. But it ended up affording me the opportunity to walk away from that stressful career and prioritize my children during the heart of COVID. And so I thank God all the time that he put me through those really horrible struggles so that I could have those pivotal moments that I assigned meaning to that let me become the person I am today. Because I think back at it now, and I'm 46 right now, and at 36, I was in the middle of the struggle. And I have different struggles today, but I'm a totally different person, and I'm better equipped to handle them, and definitely I'm better equipped financially. So that's where I was and where I am today. And like I said, there's still different struggles, but ultimately, the breathing room, the margin that I was able to create in my life with the grace of God, it was literally life-changing.
What I love about your story, and I don't ever get tired of hearing about it, it's nice when I get to hear it in a continuum, because it really makes me appreciate where you were and where you are now. And by all appearances, you have done extraordinary feats by being very ordinary. Like there wasn't any overnight things or overnight changes, right? And one place that I see people suffering or struggling, and I know everybody talks about middle class and it's so hard and stuff, but even within that, I find that people are waiting for either deprivation, like it's so hard, you talked about the pain point, so you do something, so it becomes reactive, or they're waiting for things to be so good in order for them to enjoy their lives. Right? So it's like, it's not that bad, so I don't have to pay attention to it. But it's not really that great yet, so I don't really get to enjoy it. Right. And that, I think, is at the heart of a lot of financial decisions, right? They get away with it, and it's not that painful, so they can like incrementally increase debt over time. But then, what is that threshold where they go, oh my gosh, how did the balance get so high, right? That pain point. And they don't even really have anything to show for their enjoyment either, usually. It's usually just that lifestyle creep like you talked about. And how much money drama or mental drama is actually entrenched in our identity and our relationship with money. And would you agree that it's not really anyone's fault that we assimilate this? It's just the way life is. We just pick up little pieces along the way, not really sure what we're adapting to or making part of our behavior patterns. It's subconscious in a lot of ways. So there's not really anybody to blame, but we do have the power to change it.
Yeah. I think what I have realized time and again is there are, let me put it like this. Even though Dave Ramsey gave me a paradigm shift that permitted me to have a complete revolution in my finances, and to be clear, if you didn't piece it together, the paradigm shift was he helped me realize that there were actually people with no debt. I was 35 years old when I realized that people had emergency savings for emergencies. I knew people had savings, but to me it was like savings for the future, savings for, to eventually retire. It never dawned on me. Exactly. Never dawned on me. Even vacations, I really believe that you put vacations on a credit card and then you paid it off. I
meant the people have savings for vacations or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the pain point helped me, the way I like to think of it is that it opened me up for the paradigm shift. And then once I had the paradigm shift, there were two things that had to happen. One, I had to become really clear about the future that I wanted. And so for some people, it's like this very hard thing to contemplate. Like they feel like they have to have this grandiose vision for who they're going to be in 10 years. And mine was really simple. I was going to be the person who didn't have debt anymore. I was going to be the person who didn't have payments like that. And once I made that decision of the future me, then it became more of a, how can I stay inspired to walk that out? And part of that means the inspiration to walking it out was letting the old version of me die. So the part of me that believed that credit cards are needed for emergency, she had to die to be replaced by the person who believed that savings takes care of emergencies, that I can be prepared in advance for emergencies. And so a lot of times, I would say one of the nuanced approaches for the way that I tackle finances as well, you were kind of talking about this idea of how hard do I have to go or how much do I have to change?
Right.
Many of the people that I work with, they're not in desperate straits, but they are living under frustration and they have financial insecurity. Not because they don't make good money, but it's because they're sort of like spending it here and there in sort of nonsensical ways. And so when I realized that we were going to become debt-free and that future for me was set in stone for me, it was locked in, then the question became, how can I get there the fastest? What can I do? And I was willing to take really massive action, but there were certain things I wasn't willing to get rid of. So this is where I deviate from Dave Ramsey, where he would say, become gazelle intense, and you're not going to see the inside of a kitchen or a restaurant, beans and rice. I mean, I'm okay with beans and rice, but let's be honest, I like to eat richer food. I like to still go out to a restaurant. While we were in our debt repayment journey, and remember, we paid off a tremendous amount of money in 5-ish years, we still went out to dinner once a week, so twice a pay period. We were able to cash flow a trip to Europe. We did that in between paying off our consumer debt and paying off the house. And part of that was because I had other priorities that were really important to me, and they were also part of that future vision. And so I think what I'm building up to is that there isn't one silver bullet that is going to be this quick fix. You have to just know what's important to you. What do you prioritize? And then what is the ultimate focused goal you want to hit? Those things can combine to making your spending decisions really easy. I'll tell you, I used to browse the Target end caps and the
trinkets.
Yes, the decision to do that, it just evaporated. I would look at something that I would want to buy and I would think, why? Just because it's a great price and it's kind of cool, I would rather pay off the debt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
One thing that we are not debt free yet, but we are working towards it. But one thing that helped me shift was that when I did that, like say I decided, silly as it is, decided to pass on the coffee, right? Which I know you don't necessarily subscribe to that, but maybe you go from 5 days a week down to 3, you know. If you took that money, and thanks to electronic banking, if you aren't cash only, but you still have that hybrid model of using your debit card, I would take that money and immediately transfer it into another account. So like it was coming out of my expenses as though I had spent it. But then once it accumulated to a certain dollar amount, then I could make a larger payment on a credit card or something like that.
Yeah.
And it helped me to still feel like I still spent the money, I just put it towards something of more value. So because you know how it is, unless you have a plan for it, that $5 didn't go to coffee today, but it might go to, you know, a McDonald's run later in the week.
Yeah.
You know, so it's still about having a plan for the money, not just eliminating the behavior of spending, but what are you replacing that behavior with so that you can continue to make progress and that you're still being mindful about the money. What I've found is people's internal capacity, just in general, the emotional side of things gets tapped out.
Yeah.
And so the fatigue of always having to be disciplined, that grinds people down. And if you have kids that ask more than once to go out to eat on a Sunday afternoon, you might say yes, because you just don't have not that you don't have the willpower, but the resistance and the fatigue and life and all that stuff gets heavy. What do you say to people that are navigating the emotional journey of trying to transition their paradigm shift? Like they haven't had that yet, so they're not resolute about it, but they want it. They're just struggling with the emotional drama of it, and they're still relying on their energy to make follow through with their decision making, which we know energy can get zapped pretty quickly these days.
Yeah. So the first thought that came to mind is there's a quote, and I cannot recall the person who said it, but it's so true, and I can look it up later for you, and you can put it in the show notes. But the quote is that most people don't... I'm going to mess it up now. This is the gist of it. You don't fail at your goal because you have a bad plan. You fail because you have an easier path to a lesser goal. So definitely that's not how the quote originally goes. But the idea is that I might fail at paying off my credit card because there's an easier path to a lesser goal, which is going out to dinner now. So this conflict of like following the path of least resistance, which I did that a lot for a big portion of my life. I just thought, I'll just follow where the opportunities take me. It feels like there's no resistance here, and it felt like a blossoming effect. But the truth is that sometimes the path of least resistance is taking you in the exact opposite direction of where you actually want to be in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years. So that's the first thing that really came to mind. You asked another part to that question.
Yeah, so I hear that part too, and I absolutely agree with you that I guess I've heard it said, you trade what you want most for what you want now.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I want to be debt free, but that seems so far in the distance that this $30 or this $100 we're going to spend today, it's not going to matter that much. Well, that's how you got into debt, was thinking that the spending wasn't that much and that there would be a windfall to catch up later, which are all just lies. But they're patterns that we get used to because they do happen. You get Christmas money, you get this money, you get bonus money, you know, like our social structure is set up to where if you're good, you get rewarded with a balloon of some sort, or you get something. And so I think that kind of undercurrent in our mindset about money is there too, that, it'll be fine because later I'll get this.
Yeah, there's that, right? Here was the other point I was going to make, though, because I think it ties in nicely. I'll use an example out of my business. This isn't necessarily a money example, but it works. In my business, I had started it with the clear intention of being a financial coach and only a financial coach. I came into some hardship in figuring out how to sell that to the right people for an amount that is like worth it for my effort. Right. It sounds kind of harsh to say that.
You gotta pay the bills. You gotta stay debt free.
Exactly. You're not wrong. So what ended up happening was then I saw that a lot of the clients I worked with were business owners. And then I realized, oh, they need help with their bookkeeping too. And then I realized, well, bookkeeping would be a much easier sell because it's a compliance requirement. Everybody needs it. And it was an easier sell. And I sold more of it. But then what happened was I built a business I didn't want. And so I've been, honestly, for the last year and a half, unraveling that and getting out of the bookkeeping business so that I can get back to the space that I was called to be in. So this is a great example of like the goal that I originally set out for. There was an easier path. I am a financial coach, but I wanted to grow my business to a certain size as a financial coach, but selling bookkeeping felt easier. So I followed that path. And then the next question, this was what I was building up to, is you asked like, how do you help the person who gets trapped following the wrong path? Well, we run out of energy and we run into confusion. And so what I have learned to do is to borrow energy from other people. And I didn't realize I was doing this even in my debt-free journey. Watching people's debt-free screams like on the Dave Ramsey show, or listening to people who are mortgage-free and talking about how amazing that feels. Like their honest exuberance, their excitement energized me. And I'm telling you, you guys, when I was on that journey, I would watch so many Dave Ramsey clips. I would watch clips of other people who were like living financially abundant lives and talking about how wonderful it was, and it energized me. I borrowed from them. And even now in my business, there are some coaches that I work with and they talk with such certainty and such conviction and such excitement. And they're so joyful about the work that they're doing as a coach, not as a bookkeeper.
Right.
I can essentially ride their coattails, if you will. I can ride their energetic coattails. And so if you're in a spot where you're like, I'm on this journey, but it feels really hard and long, it's like, find somebody whose coattails you can jump on, whether it's in person or whether it's online. Yeah. But man, that is to me one of the foundational steps, is making the goal, getting committed, and then finding ways for you to have injection of inspiration along the way
when you need it. Yeah, when you were saying that, I was thinking about how I, like, on my own journey of things, and how I a lot of times talk about borrowing the belief of others in order, to borrow my belief that I know you can get through this. So if I believe that you can do it, it's okay to borrow my belief until you've put in the reps that you have the belief in yourself as well. But this is also parlays into 12-step programs or any of that. Accountability. You're not just borrowing belief or excitement, you're building emotional accountability for following through on what you said you were going to do. And when people are at their weakest is when they are supposed to go to a meeting, and go get that energy from someone else, the support for someone else's muscle to get through it. And I love that you were able to intersect that and integrate that into how we handle money. There is only really one problem, and that is life, making it through our lives. It just sometimes presents lessons in different areas. And what I have found to be very fascinating is to study all the areas that problems show up in and figure out what they all have in common. So it's like transferring that information, something that somebody may have known in a 12-step program but hadn't applied it to their money, right? Because it's seemingly unrelated. Or what people learn about their grief journey that they have never even saw, but now they didn't know that they were perhaps grieving a version of their business they had to let go, right? And so I'm helping people understand that it's the same set of skills, guys. It's just going to show up in different ways. And here's what it looks like when you come into it with your money or with your business or anything else like that. Being with that lens of grief and the way that I see the world, I often talk about the different versions of myself that I had to evolve through and had to navigate and wrestle with. And you teed it up perfectly, because you said that version of Tina had to die, in order for the other one. So can you elaborate a little bit on what it was like to grieve the old version of you? Because that transition of releasing the past so that it doesn't show up and hijack the present is something I think most people aren't even aware is happening. But that other version of you, like, what did you have to let go in order to do that, to embrace this new version of you?
I don't know that there's something I had to let go. I think other than the ideas that person held, I think what I really needed to do was take it to somebody else. So there's a confession element, because what happens is when you make the decision to be the new you, like whatever the new you is or whatever the new goal is, because really the person who accomplishes that goal is different than who you are today. When you make that decision, you are going to have episodes where it's going to feel, the best way to explain it is that, I heard somebody else say it like this. This isn't mine. This came from a coach that I work with. But she said, you'll have the desire, and then you'll experience doubt. And then you have to make a decision, and then you have to be determined to complete the goal. And so as you're going through that, what's going to happen is when you experience the doubt, you could have a misstep along the way. And so what would happen for me is that I would experience the mishap, and just the way that I'm wired, I'm wired toward a lot of like self-recrimination. Like I constantly beat myself up. I live in the world of I could have done it better. I should have done it better. Why did it take me so long? The thought that I've had countless times is, if only I had figured this out in my 20s, how much farther along would I be now? How much better would I could have had? It took me until my kids were 7 and 5 to become present in their everyday life to the degree that I was. Before that, I was working 50, 60, 70-hour work weeks. And I passed them over to daycare and to other, I have so much guilt about that. I had to release that guilt, and I had to stop beating myself up about it and accept grace. So I think that's really the core thing, is I had to be really clear on the future I wanted, but I also had to be willing to give myself grace, which, to be candid with you guys, is something I still struggle with. It's an ongoing journey for me. And I want to add to this too, is that when you get to the other, there's this misnomer that I had. I actually have a video about this on my YouTube channel. When we paid off the house, I went through this intense honeymoon stage. I was so convinced that all of my stress from work was going to never be there again, because I no longer needed that job. I could tell them to shove it at any time.
Yeah, that's a trap.
I had tricked myself into thinking that once we were 100% debt free, that I would be a different person at work. But the only way to be a different person at work would have been to be an actual different person at work. I would have had to change my work persona. That wasn't going to magically happen just because the house got paid off. But I had this honeymoon phase where I thought it happened. So I was dealing with things in a totally different way. And then one day it just kind of all came down on me like a ton of bricks. And I have, a confession video on YouTube where I was like, you guys, I was wrong. The work anxiety is still there. I'm still the old Tina in this realm. This part got fixed, but this part is still there. And the reason I tell that is because once you go through that process of you have a desire, you work through the doubt, you make a firm decision, and you're determined to walk it out. When you get to the other side of that, it's just going to give you a different degree of clarity, which is going to give you a new contrast, a new thing that you want. So once the house was paid off, I got the clarity that my work was still a problem. I had to solve that problem.
Right.
And so incidentally, the work is never done. I mean, not this side of eternity.
No. And I love that you brought that angle up, because that is like what I like to call the roller coaster, or the bell plunge, whatever we call it. But it's like the uninformed optimism of something is like, I don't even know what could go wrong. I'm ecstatic, and like you said, you paid off yay, I'm excited. And then the informed pessimism. Oh, there is yet another layer of work for me to do. Great. And what gets you through that instead of quitting is the processes and procedures that you put in place, the accountability, who are you journeying with. That's what gets you through that valley of despair, that difficult time of transition, the discomfort of change.
Yeah.
We have to grow our capacity for sitting in the discomfort of things, and then looking for people to journey with us through the discomfort that are not going to judge us, I love that. And as a business owner, maybe I'll have you on another time to talk about this, but you talk a lot about your journey from getting out of corporate into, say how I want to frame this. You get out of corporate and then you start your own business, and then that like projects you into a whole nother journey of evolution, right?
Yeah.
And how you have to grow as a person. Like, you want a self-development program, start a business, because it's legit.
True.
It will send you on the biggest, wildest ride of your life, because everything you grow through is something that you've gone through at some point. And so you're always serving people that are just a little bit behind you in one respect or another, right? Or maybe several steps behind you. But what has this journey meant to you? And because I hear you said you were called to this, and I hear that, and I feel called to do the work that I do, but it's always out of taking pain and turning it into purpose, in that journey of purposeful living. And oftentimes the things that we feel called to do, we have built-in accountability by teaching the stuff. Like, it's like, I got to teach this every day to hold myself accountable to continue the transformation. So can you share a little bit about what that journey has been like now that you've left corporate and now you're doing something on your own? Because that's a gap that a lot of people don't ever get to do. There's two parts to this. The entrepreneurial part, realizing that now you are debt-free and you still have to provide an income and grow a business, right? But then maybe a tip at the end of what do you tell people when they're on a salaried income that may or may not change. They don't have the ability to scale and grow and add to their income. Can they still start this journey if they don't want to start their own business as the outcome?
Okay, that's loaded. So
I know it. I have a reputation for asking complex, multi-layered questions.
When I think about the journey of leaving corporate, I think there was a lot of misunderstanding that I held about what it would be like to start a business. So the first thing is that I believed that because I was so adept at navigating the corporate environment, I have an MBA, I understand business, and I understand how to fulfill processes and to deliver. I am a very thorough planner and deliverer.
Our notes look very different. Mine are very...
Hers look abstract to me, and mine look very orderly.
We could hold up our notebooks and you'd be able to tell very quickly
that we have these different gifts.
Different gifts.
And so what ended up happening for me was, I remember when I left corporate, I thought, you know what, babe, so I'm saying this to my husband. I'm like, I'm going to take the summer off to just relax, because once I open up these doors, man, everybody's coming. And it was hilarious. And I even had 15, 20 people were like, yeah, I need your services. As soon as you open your doors, let me know. And it was crickets. It was it took so long for me to find my first client. And so when we talk about the things that come up, what really was showcased for me was a lot of problems I had with defining my own worth and my value that I give to the world. And the reason I knew I had a problem with that was because I had a really hard time sticking to my prices and actually asking people to pay what I believed was a fair return for the service. I actually think my price is like a freaking screaming deal. I really genuinely believe that, but I would discount myself perpetually. And part of the reason I was doing this was because in corporate, I never really had to tell people what I was worth. I just followed the path. I got the next degree. I applied for the next position. I had this perpetual moving forward energy of a very well-worn path. It was very easy for me to get my college degree. It was very easy for me to climb the corporate ladder because the steps are so many people have done it before me. It's really easy to see, what do you want to do next? And that was not easy for me to see in a business setting. So I had to put myself in the really uncomfortable position of realizing that I don't know exactly what the right next step is, but I'm willing to experiment. And I also had to be willing to challenge myself to ask for the price that I thought was genuinely fair and not the price that I thought would get the sale. That has raised up so much baggage from when I was young about being a military brat who moved around a lot, always tried to fit in. And also the baggage of, probably looking back at it now, I'm fairly certain I was underpaid in corporate because I realize now that I should have been asking for raises and things.
Sure.
So there's a lot of growth that comes not just from the managing your money, but also being able to build revenue and sell yourself. That is a huge part of it, to find the value that you give. And that is something you can do in corporate too. I struggled with that in corporate. That's the point I'm making. I'm pretty certain I was underpaid because I had a hard time articulating to other people what was the value that I was bringing and then asking for commensurate pay. So that was probably the biggest journey I've had to take since starting my business, and I'm still on it. I'm perpetually growing in that regard. And so,
especially if your purpose and your passion is to help people, right?
Yeah.
And you're good at it, and it seems second nature to you, it's very easy to see someone struggling and know that you have support for them.
Yeah.
And to just want to do it because you're a good person.
Well, it's really funny. I'm going to add to that because I have a tendency to think that because it's easy for me, I should charge less. That if it's not hard, then it's not worth the pay, that I have to struggle to earn it. That is a mindset that I think permeates American culture, that you have to bootstrap, you have to work hard, you have to lean in when you feel like it's the wrong thing to do because you have to muscle through. And that language, that rhetoric, that energy infused my life, and it did bring a lot of success. I made a lot of money in corporate. The problem was I was absolutely miserable. So then I leave my corporate career. I start a business where I do the things that I'm the most skilled at, naturally skilled at, which is planning, encouraging, having intuitive leaps, helping, mirroring for people the things that they're grappling with. And because that was easy for me, I kept undercharging for it. Even though the value was high, I felt like it was wrong to ask for the pay that I deserved.
Because it's just natural to you, and you totally don't, you wouldn't pay for it because you can do it.
And that was a gift. And I have a coach that I work with, and he was the one that helped me to see that you wouldn't pay a person who struggles at art to make a painting for you. Like, you want the artist, the person who's good at it, has a natural skill and has developed that natural skill. That's the person who you buy a $20,000 painting from, not the Yahoo off the street that took 20 years to paint something that looks like chicken scratch.
Right. But because we're the artist, like an artist isn't going to buy artists, you know what I mean? Like they're going to make it for themselves with their fingerprint on it. So I think there's a lot that goes into that journey, and we have to extrapolate it out, and there's personal growth beneath it for us. Being willing to graciously forgive ourselves for thinking that about ourselves or limiting what was possible for ourselves. There's a huge growth journey inside launching a business, but it isn't for everyone.
No, and that's why, but frankly, you could think of it, even if you decide to stay in corporate, you could look at it like you are still your own business, but you only have one client.
That part, that's what I was hoping you would get to, you know, because it's a mindset shift where you start realizing that you are in the driver's seat of your life. Yeah. You are planning the roadmap. You might take some detours, but ultimately you decide what happens next. And when you are responsible for what comes next, the strategy is different. The game plan is different. Thinking of this as I own my own business. My business is that I, like, say you're a teacher. You don't work, the mindset shift would be you don't work for the school. You are an educator who has partnered with an education system to deliver educational material to rotating groups of students. Yeah. Right?
So you decide what your purpose is for being in business. Right. So if you're a teacher, it's like, my purpose is to inspire the youth. Or maybe it's different. Maybe it's to, like, teach the love of art or teach the love of history. Like, whatever your purpose is, you define that first. And then you realize that your one client is the school setting, is the school that's paying you.
Right. And the way you would steward that, or you would scale that or grow that, that's a whole nother lesson for another day. But you take the driver's seat, you stop letting someone else drive the boat, right? And you start being empowered, and you want to be a profitable business, you would need to overhaul the way that you handle those finances, right? People think that their personal finances are different, and they are somewhat in the function of them. There's usually more people getting into family finances than just one person is in a business. But I love how you help people change their money mindset. You have a book out there,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a YouTube channel. Tell us a little bit about that so people can follow you and learn from you. And if they need your services, they'll know where to find them. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I do have a book out on Amazon. It's The Beginner's Guide to Win with Money, and it is sort of like a precursor to the work that I do that's the more mindset-driven stuff. This is more like tactical approach to dealing with your money, and it teaches some things about like retirements, for example, that I think a lot of people don't understand, as well as what the stock market really is. I think there is a lot of financial jargon that confuses people, and
Especially
then because
today.
of that, they're afraid to engage with it. It feels too hard, and so they just step away. So that book is meant to really help you become comfortable with some really great tactical approaches, but also teach you the financial language in an easygoing layman's way. And then you can also find me on YouTube. My channel is Christina Edel, literally my name. And it's spelled with a CH, and Edel is EDEL.
Well, I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm active on YouTube, post every other week, and then I'm active on LinkedIn. I have a couple other social medias, but I'm not very, I think LinkedIn and YouTube is where you'll find me engaging the most.
Well, I thank you for the work that you do and the inspiration that you were to me. And we say this often, but it was like I imagine the conversation or the thoughts God was having when we finally synced up. And if you think you can't meet any cool people in community chat groups, we are living proof.
True.
Years ago now, she reached out to me because she saw a post that I had made in a community group about a workshop that I had coming up. And she knows that some people make really crazy decisions when they're grieving with money, and thought that maybe there was something we could talk about together. And we had coffee, and we've been besties ever since, and been on quite a journey of sharing entrepreneurship together, motherhood, faith, our faith. We have some really great spiritual conversations, and I hope that you'll consider coming back on the podcast to talk about other things.
Yes.
Down the road. She'll be our resident money advisor.
It would be my honor.
You have a great way of explaining things. And one thing I will tell the listeners, if you're dealing with shame around your financial picture, I would encourage you to let go of the shame, right? But also to reach out to people who are actually gifted in shame-free conversations, which Tina is, Christina, professionally. But she has this way of just, oh, that's it? Okay. Here's the problem. Here's how we fix it. Like, there is no, well, you really shouldn't have done that, or shaming or blaming or any of that. It's like, if you don't, I tell my kids this all the time, I can deal with anything, any problem that you come through that door with. I feel confident in being able to hear you, receive it, and then create a solution for it.
Yeah.
The only thing I can't deal with is the stuff I don't know about.
It's true.
And I feel like you really posture that in your business, is that like there's anything, you can deal with anything. Any kind of money problems, you got it.
Yeah, I do believe that we are a judgment-free zone and that everything is figure-outable.
And that is a great place to end the show. So whether you're driving in your car, folding some laundry, taking a walk with a friend, thank you so much for being here, because life is now in session, and it's time that we lived with some purpose and intention. So in the meantime, love your people, live your purpose, and don't stop creating possibilities. Have a good one.